Hey there, St. Andrew's Youth Ministry. Jonathan here, and I'm just excited that even in the midst of this, we still get to walk through different practices and ways of following Jesus. And I hope these practices and ways are giving you new tools for your tool belt of how to follow Jesus in this day and age. And I'm excited that certain things are starting to slowly return to normal. We've been having services at the farmers market for the last couple of weeks, and I hope you've been able to enjoy those and hear from Steve, just kind of what's been stirring it on his heart. If you haven't, they're on our website. Go check them out. I highly encourage it. At the same time, I'm excited that in a couple of weeks, we should be able to gather together outside in some form or fashion to hang out together. And I'm looking forward to that. If you were there and you were a part of our confirmation service last week, that was powerful and fun to see all of you students that we got to see and your families together outside, being safe and physically separated, even though we are together in this season. And so it's fun to know that we get to try something different. But this summer, I want to keep grounding us in practicing the way of Jesus. And today I want to talk to us about prayer walking. So let me pray real quick for this little talk, and then we'll go from there. Jesus, I just pray for our students that you keep helping them encounter you in new ways, that you give them the faith and the courage to try new ways, try and build a new lifestyle, to follow you closer and closer, that you may work and grow and live in them more and more and more as they live in the world around them. So as we think about what comes next, we just pray that you speak to us and give us the ability to gather and go. And you can pray. Amen. So before we go into the talk, I just want to show us a quick video. And we're going to go, we're going to go old school with it to VeggieTales. The one, the only VeggieTales. If you know VeggieTales, I'm sure you know VeggieTales if you grew up in the church. If you don't know VeggieTales, some guy in the late 90s came up with the idea of talking vegetables telling Bible stories, computer animated. The first several of them were fantastic. I can't speak for the rest of them, but this is one of my favorite, called Josh and the Big Wall.
What are you doing?
We're going to knock your wall down.
By walking around in circles?
Yes. It's not because we're crazy or anything. Our God told us to do it this way.
Oh, that's a great idea. You go ahead and keep walking.
Keep walking, but you won't knock down our wall. Keep walking, but she isn't gonna fall. It's plain to see, your brains are very small to think walking will be knocking down our wall.
You silly little pecan. You silly little peas. You think that walking around will bring this city to its knees? The awesome powers of this wall we've clearly demonstrated. But out here in the hot sun, perhaps you're dehydrated? Pity them, Philippe. Mais oui, Jean-Claude, mais oui. Won't you join me in my irritating little song? It would be an honor.
Keep walking, but you won't knock down our wall. Keep walking, but she isn't gonna fall. It's plain to see, your brains are very small to think walking will be knocking down our wall. Keep walking, but you won't knock down our wall. Keep walking, but she isn't gonna fall. It's plain to see, your brains are very small to think walking will be knocking down our walls. It's plain to see, your brains are very small to think walking will be knocking down our walls.
Double time!
right. But the Israelites did make it all the way around Jericho. Back at their camp.
So why do I show us the video of Josh and the big wall, Josh in the Battle of Jericho, when it comes to the idea of prayer walking? Whenever I think of prayer walking, I am reminded of Joshua chapter 6. So Joshua chapter 6 is where VeggieTales bases that little cartoon on and that little song on. And it's the people of Israel going back in to start reclaiming the promised land after their years of slavery, after their years of wandering in the desert. They're working their way back to their land. So Joshua chapter 6, I'm just going to read some of it for us because while the VeggieTale video kind of shows us it, it's definitely misrepresented. But it's kind of humorous, and that's the point. So Joshua 6, starting in verse 1. Now Jericho was shut up inside and outside because of the people of Israel. None went out and none came in. And the Lord said to Joshua, see, I have given Jericho into your hand, with its king and mighty men of valor. You shall march around the city, all the men of war going around the city once. Thus you shall do for 6 days. 7 priests shall bear 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark. On the 7th day you shall march around the city 7 times, and the priests shall blow the trumpets. And when they make a long blast with the ram's horn, when you hear the sound of the trumpet, then all the people shout with a great shout, and the wall of the city will fall down flat, and the people shall go up, everyone straight before him. So Joshua the son of Nun called the priests and said to them, take up the ark of the covenant, and let the 7 priests bear 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark of the Lord. And he said to the people, go forward, march around the city, and let the armed men pass on before the ark of the Lord. To me, when I think about the idea of prayer walking, I think back to this story of the Old Testament. It's a fascinating story to me because it's one where the people of Israel were to reclaim their land, but there was an obstacle in the way. And what we see sometimes in scripture, and I wrestle with this all the time, is you see that the people of Israel will fight to reclaim their land. Other times you see that God does something crazy and miraculous, like walking around Jericho. Other times you see Gideon, where they still kind of fight, but God takes it from being 100,000 troops to 10,000 troops to 300 men fighting an entire nation. And there's lots of things we could get into about the Old Testament and war and things along that. But when it comes to this specific instance of the battle for Jericho, the people of Israel never lift a finger. God goes out before them. God does the work. God brings down the wall of Jericho. And it's fascinating me. And we don't see it inside the passage. We don't see it from the author of Joshua. But I wonder what the people of Israel were doing as they walked around those walls. We know the 7 times supposed to blow trumpets on the 7th day. But for those 6 days, were they praying? Were they thinking? Were they playing Game Boy? Like what were they doing as they were walking around the walls? Were they just checking their Fitbit, their Apple Watch to see how many steps they had gotten in? Like, what were they doing? And I think that's where a lot of this idea of prayer walking comes from. This prayer walking is an intentional way to connect with Jesus and partner in the work that God is up to in the world. So if we were to talk about prayer walking, the point of prayer walking is to align yourself while walking, of course, hence it's in the name, in particular places with Christ in his intercession, his go-between, his mediation, him being the middle connector, the bridge for the kingdom to come. As I think about the world that we find ourselves in today, prayer walking is absolutely powerful and important. There's so much in our world right now where we need to see God's kingdom come. We need to see God's kingdom come when it comes to a virus and a global pandemic. We need to see God come and heal and wipe this virus out and protect our loved ones from this virus. Maybe it involves prayer walking against COVID-19 and praying for the ones that we know or don't know in hospitals or at home sick with COVID-19. On the other hand, we live in one of the greatest economic recessions now that we have ever seen. If I'm right, the stat is it's the greatest recession since the Great Depression. How many people do you know that are hurting financially? Maybe you don't know anybody hurting financially, but either way, we can still partner with, because we need God's kingdom to come and help people provide for their daily needs, give them their daily bread, as the Lord's Prayer says. Also, I think of in this time, we live in a time where racial tension is higher than it's been any time in my lifetime. And I've seen a lot of things. I grew up in Southern California where Rodney King and the Rodney King scandal, not even a scandal, but Rodney King, I don't even know the right word for it, but police brutality against Rodney King in the early 90s. Then I've seen the entire, like most of you, the last 5 years, 7 years, 10 years of just countless things making the news, of just the racial tension and African Americans and our Black community and our Black friends and brothers and sisters who have just seen injustice come against them. And it's not just the African American community, the Black community that this happens against. But unfortunately, they're the ones who, because of 400 years of history, maybe it happens to a bit more frequently than some of the other communities. And so, as we think about this idea of prayer walking, for the time and space that we live in, I just think prayer walking is important, because the point of prayer walking, like I said earlier, is to align yourself while walking in particular places with Christ in his intercession for the kingdom to come. It's less about us and more about partnering with the work that God is already doing in the world. So when I think about prayer walking, the natural question that I want to give to you in this spiritual practice, a spiritual discipline, is, well, where, Jonathan, do I do a prayer walk? Well, simple. Anywhere. You could do a prayer walk anywhere. So right now, we're at home for the most part still. Do it around your neighborhood. Now, depending on where you live is going to change the neighborhood that you're walking around. So do it around your neighborhood. So I would challenge you this week to go for a prayer walk around your neighborhood. And you go for a prayer walk around your neighborhood because it's where you spend a lot of your time. It's you want to see your neighborhood, your home area, your community through the same eyes that Jesus sees it. In the same way, whether you're there right now, whether you're transitioning from middle school to high school and you're going to be going to Wando or Lucy Beckham, wherever you find yourself in middle school, maybe convince your parents, or maybe you have the ability to go on a bike ride and get there yourself, to go for a prayer walk around your school, in the neighborhood around your school. Ask God to give you eyes for the school, for the teachers, for your classmates, whatever it may be at your school. And we'll talk about more about a prayer walk and how to do it in a bit. But so maybe go around your school. For those of you that have a job already, go for a prayer walk around the neighborhood in the area where your job is. If you're stuck at home, prayer walk your house, especially if you have parents or siblings that don't know Jesus, or they're having issues. It is perfectly okay to just pace around in your backyard and prayer walk your backyard. Prayer walking can be done anywhere, but those are kind of the 4 big places that I would talk about that you need to do it. Now, at the same time, maybe you're somebody who, I live in a pretty affluent, not a whole lot of visible need in my community, but I really have a heart and I want to see and help the homeless population, or I want to get involved and help bringing Jesus and justice to some of the racial tension. Then I would challenge you that maybe a great first step for you is to go into a neighborhood where there's people that don't look like you and just walk around it and pray as you go. Just simply walk around it to open your eyes to what is going on in that neighborhood where you're not used to, where you don't go all the time. At the same time, you can even go, and I would challenge us to go walk around the church and pray around the old village and where we find St. Andrew's itself. Those are just some of the practical places you can go to practice a prayer walk in this season. And so you can go anywhere to do a prayer walk. And what? So what is a prayer walk? So it's simple. You pray as you walk. Pray as you walk. As you pray for God to give you eyes to see. So you pray for God to give you eyes to see what Jesus sees in that area. So often we walk around an area and we get desensitized to it. We get numb to it. We're blinded by what is going on because we see it all the time. Police officers say, that usually people get the most tickets for running stop signs or stoplights or even speeding closest to their house. So the closer you are to your house, there is a chance as you're driving that is going to be where you get a ticket most likely or most of the time, highest percentage. And the reason for that, usually they argue, is that something about the psychology that we know what those streets are like. We know where that stop sign is. We know that, oh yeah, there's nobody here. I can go roll through that stop sign, or I can go 5 above here, because you just know the area. You get comfortable in it. And that's where you're more likely to speed, run a red light, run a stop sign, whatever it is that might be that you might get a ticket for, you're more likely to get it closer to your house, is what some studies and some police officers say, which is fascinating when you think about it. And that's the same thing with our neighborhoods, with our communities. Wherever we live, at times it's easy to just not notice what is going on beneath the surface or what is going on, because you just see it all the time. Now, I've had the pleasure and the ability to live in several places now. And so I grew up in Southern California until I was 28. And for the first 28 years of my life, I lived in Southern California, Orange County specifically, the home of Disneyland, the home of Angels baseball, the home of the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim, the home of Newport Beach, Huntington Beach, Laguna Beach, the classic, I say classic, loosely, the classic TV show, The OC, or The Hills. Arrested Development actually took place in Orange County, and that's the best show that ever took place in Orange County, but that's a rabbit trail for another time. And I grew up in one house in the city of Orange till I was 11, and then I moved to another house in the city of Tustin until I was 28. So I got to know that community in that area really well. What I've realized after moving away to Seattle and then coming back and visiting, even after just a few short months being away in Seattle in the Pacific Northwest in the state of Washington, was how much I took my area for granted, because it was the only area I ever knew, I ever experienced, I ever saw. And so when I came back down, it was like, oh, Southern California is different. Orange County is different. Where I grew up is different than anywhere else I've ever lived. And now I've had the ability to move from Seattle to Charleston. And it's different. What I love too about moving is it gives me the ability to see the world differently. Every time you move, whether it's down the street, to a new city, to a new state, you have to relearn how to see the world. You have to relearn what the locals do, how locals do it, what locals say, where locals go. You have to relearn streets. You need GPS more than you ever needed it before, because your eyes are open, because you can't rely on past experience. So pray for God to give you eyes to see. As you prayer walk your neighborhood, your school, your place of employment, the church neighborhood, neighborhoods you have a heart for, pray for God to give you eyes to see. And you don't need to do this out loud. You can do it silently. Also, as you're prayer walking, pray for God to bless, move, heal, help, etc., the area you are prayer walking. And maybe every now and again, as you're prayer walking, you're going to feel a burden or a desire to stop in a particular place. Maybe a sign catches your attention, a house catches your attention, something out of normal catches your attention. Maybe you see a group of homeless people. Maybe you see a bail bond store establishment. Maybe you see that in this particular area, and there's a lot of billboards, there's a lot of restaurants. I mean, whatever it is, see what the city is throwing at you, what your neighborhood is throwing at you, and pray for it. And you may not know what to pray for, but just ask God to move, heal, help. If you see placeable bail bonds, that could be an area that needs a lot of help. Maybe if you see a place with the check cashing places, that's another telltale sign that there's something going on here, that maybe the community needs some help. So God can come in and provide and heal for these families, for these people that need these places. As you're prayer walking, especially if you're in an area pray for the individuals that you know in the area, or pray for the groups that you know in the area. Pray for the families that you know in the area. If you're in your neighborhood and you don't know somebody in a house, feel free to stop in front of the house and just pray for the people that you don't know. Maybe you can pray for ways to get to know the people that you don't know. Pray as you go. I love prayer walking because I'm hyperactive and I hate sitting still. I used to prayer walk my college campus all the time, and it's one of my favorite things that I got to do. When I go out for walks by myself, I will prayer walk the neighborhood that I walk in, because I just how I connect with Jesus, and I want to get to know Jesus's eyes for the world that I live in. I don't just want to see the world as I see the world. I want to see the world as Jesus sees the world. And so that leads this to the hope. The hope is to learn to listen and see places as Jesus sees them. To learn to listen and see places as Jesus sees them. In order to do that, we need to become quiet and listen. And that's part of what prayer walking does. You can pray a lot while you prayer walk. You can pray very little while you prayer walk. It's not about you. It's about opening up your heart and your mind and your soul to hear from Jesus. It lets what you see guide your prayers. I'm going to wait for these trash cans to roll by me. So it lets what you see guide your prayers. That's what I was talking about earlier. It's not about you guiding your prayers. It's about allowing the Spirit to guide the prayers and allowing what you see to guide your prayers. And as you do that, you gain a perspective on the larger activity of God, because God is already up to and at work and on the move in our communities, in our neighborhood, in our world. And this practice helps us gain a perspective on the larger activities of God. It helps you become aware of places, people, things that you may typically ignore. And it allows you to explore God's vision for places and people who gather there. It draws you to Jesus. So my challenge to you students this week is go and do. Go and do. This afternoon, tomorrow, tonight, go for a prayer walk. You can go by yourself and you can go with others. And they're two different things. When you go by yourselves, you just all you and Jesus. When you go with others, you can have kind of a guided time and talk it through. It might be even something that we do at some point as a youth ministry, as a group, is we might practice prayer walking at some point together, collectively, because it's powerful and it's important. So that's my hope for you students in this all. Practice the way. Practice the way. I'm excited to see you in a couple of weeks physically in groups. It'll be so much fun to be together. You won't hear from me much the next week or so on social media or with something like this, because Ellie and I are going on a classic summer road trip, 23 hours in a car, to the great state of Minnesota, where we will be on a lake in a cabin in the middle of nowhere, unplugging for the next 10 days or so. So you'll be missed. Be on the lookout for random things I may post as we go, and or maybe a random teaching video while we're up at the lake, just to show you the life of Minnesota and life on a lake in Minnesota. Till then, grace and peace, students. Stay safe, wash your hands, wear a mask, and be as physically distant as you can. And pray. Go on that prayer walk. Till next time, students, I cannot wait to see you.